had an idea for how I would change the tax system, because I think if you're not, if you haven't earned more than £6,000 in a year, and if you don't have, huge amounts of money in your bank, I don't think you should pay council tax. And I think instead of offering these universal credits or discounts, instead of doing that, only which are only eligible for certain people, I would actually just make it. When you make rules, you have to make it fair for everyone. And if you've got some people who are claiming universal credits because they've got rent, and then you've got other people who are earning far far less, but because they don't have rent, they can't claim it. Or how I would do it is, I would say if you were earning like £6,000 or less, if you can prove that you have only made £6,000 in the last year through your bank accounts, then you should be allowed off. You should be allowed to not pay as council tax. If you earn more than 6,000, then you should only perhaps pay whatever's more than 6,000, because you shouldn't be having people living off less than £6,000, because you can't have a decent life when you're doing that. You become just a prisoner in your home if you've only got £6,000. And it's just annoying to think that I've got like, okay, I'm going to be earning 4,000. I'm not working. I can't work because I see humans as being like demonic robots, and I think that they're ill. I think they see me as invisible. I despise them because I can't get help from them, and it's annoying to think that there's millions of churches all over the world and I can't walk into any and say, hey, I'm the real Christ, because they would just ask me to leave. It's very, very annoying having to live like this. And because I have lived like this for such a long time, my hatred towards humans is so, so massive that I have developed a large phobia of them. And I cannot be around them. So I've now got quite a severe mental illness because of this. And it's just really annoying to think that the council are going to take more money off me because why? Because I can't prove it. I can't go into a GP and tell them. I've done this twice. I did this in 2013. I went into a GP and asked, to seek help, saying that I'm Christ. And they did. They sectioned me. They weren't interested in anything that I said. They weren't taking anything that I said seriously. And they just said, are you suicidal? It's like, yeah, of course I am. Why would I not be suicidal? I'm the real Christ. I'm the real God. Everyone's treating me like I'm invisible. I've had a horrible shit life. No one would take me seriously. And of course I'm suicidal. And then they just use that to and the second time I went, I can't even remember what happened, but I just felt very patronized, like they were looking at me like I had a mental illness rather than looking at me like I was serious. Even though it was in 2008, even though I'd had a ton of evidence, I'd built up a whole Bible, everything meant absolutely nothing to them. So, if I try to, I don't want benefits. I just don't want to have to pay £1,100 a year council tax. A few years ago, it was about 700, then it went up to 800, then it went up to 900, and now it's 1,100. And if I'm only going to be earning 4,000, I don't know. I'm not seeing any evidence that it's going to happen this year. And I'm thinking about maybe all the other people who can't work. I don't understand why someone can't work. If you're a human, and if you don't have a huge phobia of other humans, because if you don't think that other humans are just rats that are out to get you, then I don't understand why you can't work. I, however, though, can. And thing is, though, I feel like my case is such an extreme small case that I can't just think about other people's cases. But I'm thinking of the people who are earning like 20,000 and yet have £16,000 worth of bills or rent to pay or a mortgage to pay. And, it should be done. A fair way of doing this should be to say that regardless to what you're earning, if you are earning £100,000 a year, but if you're earning 100,000, that's probably extreme, because you don't need to. But if you're earning like less than 40,000, say if you're earning less than 40,000, but you're a single parent, you've got 3 kids to look after, you need a big home. You can't just live on nothing. You need to have a big home so say if it's like, I don't know, if you're earning 6,000. Say I would say there's a cap of 6,000. So say if you have only made £6,000, you shouldn't have to pay council tax. If you've got 3 kids, then I would say it's 6,000 per head. So 6,000 becomes 12 and then 18, and that's actually only 2, isn't it? 18. There's another 6. the 24, if you're earning 20, if you've saved 24,000 but you're a single parent with six kids, the father's run off, or maybe you don't even know who he is, I feel like there should be some more fairer way of understanding that single parents have kids, and they shouldn't be claiming benefits, but rather they should be allowed to not have to pay tax if they've got, because I don't think the government understand that someone who's earning 20,000 or 24,000, say, if you're earning 24,000 and you've got to look after yourself and 3 kids, and you have to pay a mortgage for a 3-bedroomed house, a 3-bedroom house in London is just crazy. You would not be able to afford that. On a 24,000 salary, because you'll probably be paying about 24,000 for your rent. Now, if you're earning 24,000 and you're spending 24,000 on a rent on your rent, because you have to pay for a 3-bedroom house, but you probably would go for a 2-bedroom, hence the 2 kids will live together. In fact, you probably just go for a 2-bedroom and then just stick all 3 kids in the same room. Like that's how bad it would be. But I think there needs to be a better way of calculating what's fair and what's not. And if someone's living off £6,000, that should be counted as poverty. They are living in poverty, and therefore, if someone's living in poverty, they shouldn't be expected to pay tax. Now, even if they're making the £24,000, and yet they have to live in a flat that's like a studio flat because they can't afford the rent. If the rent is so high that out of the £24,000 that they make each year, almost all of it gets spent on rent, and they're only left with £6,000 for 4 people, mum and 3 kids or something, I think there needs to be a better way of working calculations on who should pay tax and who shouldn't, because right now a single person who's making 12,000 doesn't have to pay tax. There's a sort of cap where you don't have to pay tax if you're earning 12,000. But what happened? There's a big difference though between earning 12,000 as a single person and earning 12,000 as a single mother, and therefore I feel like the calculations of how. I don't have kids, and I know that if you have kids, you can claim for benefits and you can claim lots of free money, and I don't think it should be done that way. I think it shouldn't be the government giving out handouts, because this makes it feel unfair how the government is giving out handouts. So I think instead of benefits being, we're going to give you free money, the benefits should be, well, we're going to let you off tax because we're going to assume that you've got four kids to look after, and that the income that you make is going to be spread out not only by paying the mortgage but also by paying for all the heads. And so I just think that if the council tax would just not, instead of giving out handouts to people, just let them off paying tax if they've got loads of mouths to feed, and if there's one income. I suppose if there's 2 incomes, then you need to count the 2 incomes together. Maybe 2 of you are making 20,000 and so if you're making 20,000 and 30,000, but you need a 3-bedroom house because you've got like 3 16 or say 16, 17 and 18-year-old, they're at the age where they shouldn't really be sharing a room. Okay, the 18-year-old should probably be thinking about getting work, hence that needs to be included, because when they get to 18, they're not supposed to count as the parents. They're supposed to be on their own sort of income flow at that point. But I think that instead of giving handouts, I think the government should focus on working out how much money is actually going. Because if you're earning 20,000, but you've managed to, but 18,000 of that has gone into some sort of save to buy account, that's another thing. Because I've spent my whole life living off about sometimes £500, yes, sometimes as little as £500. When I was living with my parents, I didn't have any bills. They paid my dad paid all the electricity bills and everything basically. And if we went to restaurants, he would always pay. And so because of that, the only thing that I had to buy, I guess, was clothes and the things that he wouldn't buy me. So because of that, my income was always very low. But yeah, the downside of that is I was actually working, and I was working in a living room that was full of shit. So I'd put a curtain over and try and shut off one section that wasn't full of shit, and I used that as a massage. It was a terrible setup, it really was. But I think the guys that came enjoyed watching me suffer, or knowing that someone's living in such a horrible condition. That's kind of what I think. I know humans are sick, and I feel like people back when I first started, I feel like a lot of people came because they liked the idea of someone living in a horrible. It was a nice location. Hampstead was a nice location, but my mum's My mum's a complete mess. Her house is a mess, and you can tidy it up, and then she'll just start shouting at you for throwing things away. So I tried to cut off a section and try to make just one section of the room tidy. But yeah, if people came because they like the idea of someone living in a terrible condition in comparison to what they're living in, I wouldn't be surprised. And that's how I saw it. But I did what I did because I needed to save up, and I was able to save up. I did actually a lot of outcalls. I did a lot of outcalls, but the outcalls just made me feel jealous, because when I would go to outcalls, some of the houses were just amazing. I know, like, one guy had this chandelier full of crystals that was like the size of this room, and it was just like, wow. But yeah, he also had a wife and a bunch of girlfriends, and he definitely was not my type. He seemed like someone who probably ended up committing suicide, to be honest. And what else was there? Yeah, I just, because of that, even though I was earning a lot, okay, I didn't pay tax because I knew that I needed to buy a house. I did not see that money that I earned as that year. I didn't see it as money I earned. I saw it as money I needed to buy a property. But yeah, house prices again were just going up and up and up. And but yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you are doing a job and you can't get a mortgage, then I think there should be a way of saying, you know what, I'm going to earn 20,000 a year, but 18,000 of that is going into a save to buy account, and therefore technically I haven't earned 20,000 a year. I've actually earned 2,000 a year. And I think if someone's earning less than 24,000 and they want to have some sort of save to buy account where they put money into an account that they cannot access unless they buy a property, then I think that would be a much better scheme. Then instead of giving housing benefit to people where the government just says, okay, we're going to give you £1,000 each month for you to live. I just think that's terrible, because it's taking money off other people, and it's giving it to people. Everyone wants a house, everyone wants a house. So I do not agree with this scheme of stealing from the middle class and giving to the people that have just managed to find a way of not paying for their own house and not paying for their own rent. But I would, if I had a housing scheme, the housing scheme would be solely to work with the banks and say, we want to set up some save to buy house, because I've got a save to buy account, and I don't actually have to pay any money into it. I thought I had to pay money into it, but I don't. So if I wanted to just say I haven't worked this year and I haven't earned anything, I don't have to put anything in there. But yeah, I want to put money in there because I'm not doing anything right now. So even though I'm only making 4,000, I think I can easily spend only 3,000 and then put the other 1,000 in there. But the problem is, if I'm paying council tax too, then that means I'm only living off 2,000, and I don't believe that I should be paying council tax, and I don't know how I can get off paying council tax. I've tried ringing them up, and it's just an answering machine that goes round to all these different, press 3 for this, press 4 for this, and then they just go round in circles, and you can't actually speak to anyone. So I've tried writing to them, and I don't know what their response, because yeah, I wrote to them saying that I'm God, that I see humans as demons, and there's no way I can work, and I don't know what they're going to respond. If they respond saying, if you go to the GP, get a note to prove that this is actually how you feel and you're not just saying shit, I can do that. I am going to book an appointment. I was going to do it yesterday, ended up forgetting. I'm going to book an appointment with the GP to see if I can get this note. I don't want benefits. I do not want your benefits. I do not want help. I just don't want to have to pay for something that I can't afford. I do not want to pay for council tax. They have not taken the bins out in a very long time. Okay, I think they've did it like twice. They did take my recycle bin last time, but I think they did it by accident, because I saw them put one recycle bin in, and I brought my recycle bin out and they took it in, but then they didn't take the other 2 recycle bins. So I don't think it was actually, I think they just accidentally put the recycle bin in with the general bin. I don't know. The council are not doing anything, and to think that I'm paying a quarter of what I've earned this year towards something that I'm not getting anything for. Council tax is important because they keep the area clean, they keep the area tidy, they mow the grass. This is what the council tax is for, to look after the area. It's not to live on the land. It's for people to look after the land. And while I'm walking around, I'm just seeing junk and rubbish everywhere. grass sometimes is being mowed. It's not being bad. It was worse during lockdown. It was like mowed 4 times in the whole year during lockdown, so that was terrible. And yeah, to think that I'm paying so much and I'm not getting really anything, I don't. I think if instead of offering benefits, the government should, if I was to create a one world government, I would allow people that are on low salaries, depending on how many kids they have as well. If they have more kids, then they have more people to feed. Maybe even a discount. Say kids probably not 6,000 per adult. So if you're an adult, you deserve 6,000, and if you're earning less than 6,000, then you shouldn't have to pay tax. And I think, okay, that there needs, and if you don't own a house and you want to save up to buy a house so that you don't have to pay rent and high rent as well. I mean, thing is that I don't really know what's going to happen in the future, because in the future, you know, if half the population leave, then house prices are going to be, there's going to be loads and loads of empty houses. And if there are empty houses, people are going to think, well, why should I pay 100,000 for that house when I can go and live in that house for free? You know, if there's loads of empty houses, then the whole housing market is going to crash. So I don't know what is going to happen, but I know humans are very good at breeding. So if there is a house market crash and all the houses just become worthless because there's loads of empty houses around, and why would you spend money on a house when you can just get another house for free? You know, I don't know what's going to happen. But I want a world full of people that are smart. And right now, I think the quality of humans is just, that's how I feel. Like people are just assuming that everyone is the same and that every human life is equal. And it's not. Some humans are like robots. They really are just, they lack any real intelligence, and yet they don't realize it. And they would argue that they're the same and that equality, and you feel guilty about being like, oh, maybe I shouldn't treat them badly. And then you just hear some of the things they say, and then you just think, well, I would never say that. Like that is just so, you know. And then you start thinking, well, we're not the same. You know, I'm wondering if that's how The Matrix was filmed. You know, the Matrix. Did the people who make The Matrix, did they realize that there was some truth behind it? Like, did they have some experiences where they started seeing humans as being robots? You know, Matrix was out in 2001, I believe. I think Aaliyah was supposed to be one of the characters. Wow, I had a dream last night that The Matrix was being filmed, but there was a character in it that was actually just looking like Aaliyah, but she was actually kind of like a goddess character, and she was inside the Matrix. But I was like, oh, I don't remember watching this. I need to see the third video of the DVD of the Matrix, and I've forgotten what happens in it, and I ended up having a dream about it. And I dreamt that there was someone who looked like Aaliyah, only she looked like a goddess, and I couldn't remember the story. And then I ended up going to the bank, and it was Lloyd's Bank, but for some reason it wasn't a bank any longer. It was a stocks and shares thing, and this guy started trying to convince me to buy stocks and shares, and then he ended up doing some strange dance, and then I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna leave now. It was a very strange dream. I don't know what that was about. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, because right now the housing market is just insane. And to think that there are, you know, if you earn 20,000 and you've just put 18,000 in your bank because you know you want to buy a house so that you no longer have to live off, so you don't have to claim benefits, so you don't have to live off the government. You know, the government should encourage people to do this. The government should encourage people to save up money so that they can buy their own home. But it's true that if the housing market is about to crash because lots and lots of people are about to leave, and the houses are all going to be worthless, then yeah, I don't know. I think if you own 500 houses and they all become worthless because there's so many empty houses, why would you pay for a house when you can get a free one? You know, if that's the case, then okay, you're considerably poorer, and you probably want to get rid of your houses because you can't look after them, because running a house costs money. You know, I don't know how bad it will be. I know that there are a lot of people all over the world that would love to live in a nice area. And, you know, are there people who'd be willing to live in, you know, are the people in Blackpool, which is a very ugly kind of area, would they be willing to, you know, lose their house and go and buy somewhere in London? Probably. Yes, there probably will be. So I'm sure there's some places that will always retain value. I would definitely want to move to London. it might though be hard, because if no one wants to live in Birmingham, Birmingham's one of the most undesirable areas in England, not the most, but one of the most. You know, if I could move to London, would I? Yes, of course. And would I sell my house if my house was only worth 50,000, but a place in London was worth 150,000? Would I sell this place and have to pay for another 100,000? Yes, I probably would. So I think London will always retain some sort of value. But yeah, there's a lot of places that, even Blackpool though, there are nice areas. There are nice areas in Blackpool, but then there are also terrible areas. So I don't know what will happen. I think one of the plans would be to knock down all these tall high rises. You know, you've got these sort of pigeon type houses, or blocks, should I say, pigeon type blocks, where they just about filling as many properties, just giving people a house, giving people a space to live in. But yeah, if the house market massively drops, you'd probably want to get rid of these buildings so that the people that live in them are forced out. But because they're forced out, you know, the other houses around will be filled up. And but yeah, ideally people shouldn't be living in studio flats, and right now people are. So if there is half, you know, if half the number of people in London just left, you know, all the people living in studio flats would just move to a 2-bedroom. All the people with 3 kids and 2 bedrooms, you know, they'll move into a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom, so that each of their kids get a bedroom. So I'm sure they will fill up. If the number of people in London halved, I'm pretty sure all the houses would easily be filled up. And if there are any sort of 70s buildings that look ugly and are literally just designed to try and house as many people as possible, you know, if they go, then all the people are going to be seeking houses elsewhere, and this will help keep the housing market at a sort of a rate where you still have to pay. But yeah, I don't know what's happening though, because I don't know how many people are willing to help me. You know, I think everyone's goal should be to live in a world full of, you know, nice, intelligent, happy people who are positive people. You know, sometimes you speak to people and you feel like, wow, I really appreciated talking to that person. That person made me feel good. And there are not enough of these people. A lot of people these days, you just, I walk around and I feel like I'm living in some sort of sim game, and all I'm seeing around is just, you know, like a sim, and you're just walking around and you're just seeing people just mindlessly walk around, and you don't think they care about you, you don't think they like you, you don't think you've got anything similar to them. That's how I walk around. I walk around just feeling empty all the time, because this isn't the world that I want to live in. I want to live in a world where I feel like we have more in common with everyone, where I feel like the people, if I had a conversation with these people, that I would walk away feeling, wow, that was so interesting. And I think you can only get this kind of conversation from people that are smart, people that say interesting things, or comedians, you know, people that can tell a good joke, or say something in an interesting, funny way. You know, this is how you can tell a person has character, because they have like a unique way of talking, or a style that just makes them seem different. And I think it would be so much nicer to live in a world where the quality of humans, it's not about the quantity of humans, it's about the quality of humans. You know, what would you rather watch 100 films that are just awful and you just think, I just want to leave? Or would you rather watch 3 good films that, you know, where you think, wow, I've just learned something from that person? And I think if the world was full of intelligent people, you know, every time you'd have a conversation with someone, you'd feel like you learned something. And I don't feel that way. I have a conversation, I can't even get a conversation from most people. You know, there's a few people in the spa that I talk to every now and then, and I don't know, I don't really, usually it's just, I don't see that perspective. But you don't want, often I find that I have conversations with people and I feel like if I gave my true opinion, it would just turn into an argument, and that's just such a terrible place to be, where you don't feel like you can talk to anyone, because it would just turn into an argument, and they won't listen to you, and they won't respect your views and stuff. And so I'm just living in this constant depression because of the people around me. And you know, and it's, I want to try and avoid paying council tax, because I don't have the money for it, and I don't know how to do it. But yeah. £1,284 a year. That's the exact amount. That's quite a lot of money, considering they're not even doing anything. They're not taking the bins out, and their place is a mess. But yeah, I don't know. It would be better for people to not pay if people are on low income, or if they've got loads of kids and not enough money, or if they're paying rent, or even if they're saving up to buy somewhere. If you don't have a home and you're saving up to put money into a house, to buy a house, I think that the only housing scheme that the government should offer is a sort of save to buy house. You're allowed to put this much money per year. Right now, because the save to buy account that I've got, the maximum you can put in is £200 a month, and that shouldn't be taxable if it's a save to buy account. And if you don't have a house, okay, if you do have a house, okay, technically I do have a house, so I shouldn't be able to get council benefits off because I have a house, because I have somewhere to live. And okay, my mum helped me buy half of it, but I think that's a good housing scheme. If houses still have value, and if people can't afford to buy a house, if you're not owning a house, and if you don't own a house, and if you are saving to buy a house, there should be some sort of housing scheme that allows people to put in a certain amount of money each year, and £2,200, which is what it is now. It's £200 a month, so is that 2,400? £2,400 is not enough. There should be, and there should be something that allows you to put up to £20,000. If it's basically, it depends on the housing market. If the housing market is like what, £700 for £700,000 for a 3-bedroom house in London, then I know you could argue that they could move out of London, which they probably should, but there needs to be some sort of, you can put in £20,000 into a save to buy account, and it's non-taxable. Why? Because we want you to live in a house, and we don't want to have to we don't want to have to give you free money each year. So instead of giving you free money, we'll just let you off paying tax, because if you're earning money, that is your money, and you're not stealing it off anyone. And okay, you should pay tax, but if you don't have a house, and if you are saving up to buy a house, and or buy a deposit to have a mortgage, you should be encouraged to save. Now, if you're earning 22,000 and you're able to save 20,000, then technically you haven't just earned 22,000. You've been living off £2,000, and the 20,000 shouldn't be taxable if you don't have a home, and if you are only saving up and living off £2,000. Because it's awful to live off £2,000. That's what I'm thinking. It's awful to live off £2,000, and then to know that you're living off £2,000 whilst the government is taking, £6,000 off you. Why? Because technically you haven't just earned 2,000, you've earned 20,000, and you've somehow, and because you're saving up to buy. That's the situation that I was in. I was in a situation where I was earning a lot of money, but I was living off nothing. So the quality of my life was shit. I went through so much suffering just so that I can save up as much money as possible. And I feel like, okay, I did avoid paying tax because I needed to do this because I didn't want to, but I should be rewarded for this. I should be rewarded for not just going to the government saying, give me money. Because I knew that if I was also to get a council flat, I wouldn't be able to work in it. And I was doing massage, and I know you can't work from council. I heard that you're not allowed to work from council flats. So if I had a council flat and I was doing massage from a council flat, technically they could evict me. And so I couldn't. I didn't even have that option. But if I had have had that option, there's a lot of places you can't work. I got evicted from that studio flat when I found out that I was God. I didn't do any work for like 2 years. And then I ran out of the 20,000 that I got from my granddad's inheritance, and so I had to start working. But after 6 months, someone did report me because they noticed that there was people coming in the house. So I got reported and I got kicked out, and then I went somewhere else and I got kicked out within the first 3 weeks or something, because he too found my ad and realized that I did massage, and so I got everything back on that. I didn't lose much, but yeah, it's just really it's hard, and I don't think the government did anything to help me. And it's awful to think that if you're living off £2,000 but making £24,000 or £22,000, it's weird how how you're assumed that you're earning quite or having a good living if really you're only living off such a tiny amount, you know. I'm thinking about my uncle, you know, he's been giving, I don't know what it is, it's probably 12,000 a year. And my sister as well, she's getting like 7,000 a year or something, 7,000 a year just for being on PIP because of her exaggerating claims in you know, people shouldn't be allowed to just claim free money whilst other people are living off £2,000. You know, there are plenty of people who are living off £2,000 because every penny they're making is going towards saving up to buy a deposit. And if you've got a regular job, then you can probably get a mortgage. But still, then you have to pay, you know, the interest rate and stuff. And there should be a better calculation on what people are living off. And if you're living off £2,000 for a good reason, then it's annoying to think that they could just take £6,000 off you because they're assuming that you're not living off £2,000. They're assuming that you're living off more when really that money is actually. But hopefully, if house markets, if the house market goes back down to what it should be, hopefully this corruption won't continue to happen. But yeah, a lot of people who own hundreds of houses. I think my advice would be to not have a mortgage. If you've got a mortgage and suddenly your house drops in value, then suddenly you're not going to be able to pay the mortgage. The renters are not going to want to rent when there's a free house next door. And so I think there's going to be a bit of a problem when it comes to the banks and all the money that they've lent out to people. Because if the house market collapses, which is what I'm hoping it will do, all the bankers are going to be screwed because they're not going to be able to get it. They can repossess the house, but if the house is worthless, then yeah, I don't know. But this is what needs to happen, and I'm really hoping that we're just left with a bunch of intelligent people, because for me, living with a bunch of intelligent people is far more important than living with a bunch of morons that are just like robots.